For months, the apartment above ours had been completely empty. On Valentine's Day, it wasn't. At least, that's what it sounded like. Jose and I were in our late 20s then. We lived together in a small apartment building in a quiet town not far from California. Close enough that people passed through, far enough that nights stayed calm. Most of the tenants were families or couples like us. A lot of us were Mexican. Everyone worked. Everyone kept to themselves. The building only had 2 floors, 6 apartments total. The walls were thin, but you got used to it. You learned what was normal and what wasn't. The apartment above us had been empty for a long time. Months. Long enough that I stopped expecting noise from that direction at all. No footsteps, no TV, no shower sounds. It felt like dead space. That evening, we were eating dinner on the couch. Nothing special. I don't even remember what we made. Something simple. We had the TV on, laughing a little, enjoying the fact that neither of us had to go anywhere. That's when we heard footsteps upstairs. 2 people. You can tell when it's more than one person. The steps don't match. One set was heavier, more confident. The other, lighter, quicker, stopping more often. It was annoying, but not enough to say anything. It was Valentine's Day. We both assumed it was a couple, probably staying the night. Maybe they didn't realize how thin the floors were. While we ate, the footsteps moved around the apartment. Living room to bedroom, bedroom to kitchen, back again. We heard chairs move, a table scraping slightly, then stopping, then scraping again, like someone was trying to get it just right. Jose joked that at least someone finally rented the place. I remember nodding and agreeing. It felt normal. The noise went on for a while, then slowly settled down. At some point, it stopped completely. We figured they were eating or watching something, or maybe they went to bed early. Either way, the quiet felt expected. We went to bed not long after. I've never been a good sleeper. Even now, the smallest sound can wake me up. Jose can fall asleep anywhere. I've always envied that. That night, I remember drifting off once everything upstairs went quiet. No footsteps, no movement, nothing. Then I woke up suddenly. The sound was loud enough that it pulled me straight out of sleep. It sounded like furniture being shoved hard across the floor, not dragged carefully like before, forced, abrupt, like someone lost control of it. Then another sound followed almost immediately, a heavy thud, not something falling off a shelf, not a door slamming. It sounded like weight hitting the floor, a lot of weight. For a second, I just lay there, frozen, trying to understand what I was hearing. I shook Jose awake and whispered that something was happening upstairs. He listened. Nothing. No footsteps, no voices, no movement at all. The silence felt complete, like someone had turned everything off at once. Jose told me I was probably dreaming, that it was just a sleep start. He sounded annoyed, half asleep. I wanted to believe him. We waited for something else to happen. Nothing did. Eventually, I convinced myself he was right. I was tired. I fall in and out of sleep easily. Maybe my mind filled in sounds that weren't there. I went back to sleep. Sometime later, I don't know how much later, I woke up again. This time, the sounds were quieter. Footsteps, just one set. They moved slowly around the apartment above us, from one end to the other, then back again. Not pacing exactly, more like checking rooms, stopping, standing still, then moving again. I remember feeling too tired to react properly, too tired to think through what it meant. I didn't wake Jose again. I just listened. There were soft sounds too, like things being picked up and put back down, something sliding lightly across the floor, not rushed, almost careful. At some point, I fell asleep again without realizing it. In the morning, everything was quiet. No footsteps upstairs, no shower, no doors opening or closing, nothing. By late morning, I started thinking about it again, about how loud that sound had been, how real it felt when it woke me up. I asked Jose if he remembered anything else from the night. He said no. He said I probably dreamed it, that I always wake up easily. That afternoon, I asked the building manager if someone had rented the apartment above us. She looked confused, checked her records. said no one had. Not for one night, not at all. The apartment, she said, had been empty. I didn't argue. I didn't tell her what we heard. I just said okay and went back inside. Later, I noticed a faint smell in the stairwell, like cleaning products, strong but not fresh. It didn't last long. The apartment above us stayed empty after that, for months. No one ever mentioned renting it. No one ever complained about noise. Nothing else strange happened, but I still think about that night sometimes. Life didn't change after that night. We went to work. We paid rent. The apartment above us stayed empty. If I hadn't woken up when I did, I don't think I would remember that night at all. That's what stays with me. Valentine's Day. That year didn't feel special at all. We booked a hotel, mostly because we didn't want to drive home late. My name is Emily. I was 27 at the time. My boyfriend Daniel was 29. We lived together in Frederick, Maryland, in a quiet neighborhood where most nights felt exactly the same. Daniel worked in logistics at a warehouse outside town. Long shifts, early mornings. I worked the front desk at a dental office near downtown. By the time Valentine's Day came around, we were both tired, and neither of us felt like forcing something romantic. So we planned something simple. Dinner near the hotel. One night away, no expectations. We picked a place about an hour south, closer to Arlington, Virginia. Not a resort, just a nicer hotel than what we were used to. Clean, calm, the kind of place meant for couples who wanted privacy and sleep more than excitement. I know the name of the hotel. I'm choosing not to say it. Not because anything was confirmed, and not because I think someone would recognize it. It just feels better to leave it out. The drive was easy. We talked most of the way, mostly about work and how early we'd have to wake up the next day. When we arrived, the lobby was quiet. Warm lighting, soft music playing low. The front desk agent was polite in a practiced way. He mentioned the building was older, but well maintained, like it was something people sometimes asked about. Our room was on the second floor, near the end of the hallway. Daniel liked that because it felt quieter. I liked it because I've always been a light sleeper. At home, I usually sleep with a fan on just to cover small sounds. The room looked exactly like the pictures online. Heavy curtains, thick carpet, neutral colors, everything clean and in place. When we turned on the air system, it made a low, steady hum. We ordered food instead of going out. Ate on the bed with the TV on low. We talked, laughed a little, relaxed. Nothing about the night felt important. By the time we turned the lights off, I felt comfortable, the kind of tired that makes your body sink into the mattress. Daniel fell asleep almost immediately. I stayed awake longer, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hotel settle, a door closing somewhere down the hall, a distant elevator, voices passing by and fading away. Eventually, everything went quiet. That's when I heard the knock. Just one. Soft enough that I wondered if I imagined it. I opened my eyes and stayed still. Nothing else happened. No voices, no footsteps, no second knock. I told myself it was nothing. Hotels make unfamiliar sounds. Someone could have knocked on the wrong door. It wasn't enough to react to. Daniel didn't move. His breathing stayed slow and even. After a while, I closed my eyes again. I don't know how long I slept before the next sound woke me up. Footsteps in the hallway, slow ones. They moved past our door, then stopped directly in front of it. I could hear the weight shift, like someone standing there deciding what to do next. I waited for a key card beep, or another knock. Nothing happened. After a few seconds, the footsteps continued down the hall and disappeared. I told myself I was being overly alert. New place, new sounds, that happens. I was just starting to drift off again when I heard the knock a second time. This one was firmer, still, just once. I sat up in bed. Daniel shifted but didn't wake. I stared at the door, waiting. When nothing else happened, I got up quietly and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty, no movement, no sound. I went back to bed without waking him. I didn't want to turn it into something it wasn't. I lay there, listening to the low hum of the air system, trying to let my body relax. At some point, I fell asleep again. The next sound woke me immediately. It came from inside the room. Not loud, just close, like someone shifting their weight on the carpet near the foot of the bed. I stayed very still. For a few seconds, I convinced myself the sound came from Daniel, shifting in his sleep. But his breathing hadn't changed, slow, even, the same as before. The sound came again, not footsteps, not walking. It was more like weight settling, the carpet compressing and then releasing, close enough that I felt it more than heard it, right near the foot of the bed. I didn't move, I didn't sit up, I just listened. Nothing else followed. No voices, no movement toward the door, no sound of someone leaving the room. After a while, I started to feel embarrassed for how tense my body was. My shoulders hurt from holding still. My jaw ached from being clenched. I told myself it was the building. Old hotels make noises, heating systems shift, carpets stretch. It was easy to stack explanations when nothing was actively happening. I must have fallen asleep again without realizing it. The next thing that woke me was quieter, but more consistent. Footsteps, not in the hallway, inside the room. They were slow, measured, each one spaced evenly apart, not crossing the room exactly, more like moving a few steps, stopping, then moving again. I stared at the dark outline of the curtains, my eyes refusing to adjust fully. I could see the vague shape of the room, the dresser, the desk, the edge of the door. Daniel was still asleep beside me. The footsteps stopped when I shifted slightly. I waited. When I stayed still, they started again. I didn't wake Daniel. I don't know why. Maybe because nothing about the sounds felt urgent enough to justify it. Maybe because I didn't trust myself. Eventually, the footsteps faded, not by moving away, just by stopping. The rest of the night passed in pieces. I drifted in and out of sleep, waking at every small sound, every shift of air. Nothing else happened that I could clearly point to. No more knocks, no voices, no door opening. When morning came, it felt sudden. Daniel woke up refreshed. He stretched, checked his phone, joked about sleeping too hard. I told him I hadn't slept well. He said hotels always do that to me. In the daylight, the room looked exactly the same. Undisturbed, normal, nothing out of place. The door was locked, the security latch still in position. We checked out without mentioning anything. The front desk was busy with other couples, laughter, coffee cups, someone complaining about their bill. Everything sounded normal. On the drive home, Daniel talked about work, about traffic, about stopping for breakfast. I listened and nodded and let the night shrink in my mind, the way uncomfortable memories do when the sun comes up. For a long time, I told myself it was nothing, that I was overtired, that I was too alert in an unfamiliar place, that Valentine's Day made everything feel heavier than it was. Life didn't change after that night. We went back to work. We talked about booking another weekend away later in the year, but I noticed something about myself afterward. I stopped falling asleep easily in places that weren't home. I started listening harder when I woke up suddenly. And when a sound stopped as soon as I moved, I stayed still. If I hadn't woken up when I did, I don't think I would remember that night at all. That's what stays with me. This is a story my parents told me the same way people talk about a wrong turn they once took, as something they were lucky enough to walk away from. They were dating in the late 1980s, early 20s, still living with their parents, still careful in the way young couples were back then. Valentine's Day meant dinner, maybe a movie, and getting home before it got too late. That year, they went to a restaurant just outside the town. It was near the highway, one of the only places still open late. My dad borrowed his brother's car because his own wasn't reliable. My mother remembers noticing a car behind them on the drive out. Not close, not tailgating, just there. She didn't think much of it at the time. It was a long, dark stretch of road, and there weren't many other options for getting in or out. Cars ended up behind you for a while. That was normal. They ate dinner, took their time, and left close to closing. That's when the car wouldn't start. My dad tried the ignition a few times. Nothing. He told my mother it probably just needed to cool down. They popped the hood, stood there pretending to know what they were doing, laughing it off. The parking lot emptied. The road went quiet. Then headlights pulled in behind them. The same car. My mother says she recognized it immediately, even before she understood why. Same shape, same color. Parked a little too straight, a little too close. A man got out. He didn't rush. He didn't look annoyed. He walked up like this was something he'd already decided to do. He asked if they needed help. My dad said they were okay, just waiting. The man nodded and stayed anyway. They talked. About nothing important. About how cold it was. About how Valentine's Day made places stay open later than usual. About how quiet the road got once the restaurant closed. At some point, the man mentioned there weren't any taxis that came out that far at night. He didn't say it dramatically, just like he was sharing information. Then, he offered them a ride, just into town, just somewhere with lights, just so they didn't have to stand there. My mother says this part still bothers her because nothing about him felt threatening. He didn't pressure them. He didn't step closer. He didn't even sound hopeful. He just said it and waited. That's when my mother noticed his car. The engine was already running, not just turned on, running steadily, and the passenger door was unlocked. She remembers thinking how ready everything seemed, how little would need to change for them to get inside. My dad hesitated. He admits that. He was tired, cold, embarrassed, standing on a dark road with no guarantee the car would start again. For a moment, he considered it. My mother didn't. She told him she wanted to wait. The man nodded, said that was fine, said he could wait too. They stood there in silence. The restaurant lights shut off completely. The road was empty in both directions. After a minute or two, the man said he should probably head out. He wished them a good night. Then he drove away. Not fast, not in a hurry, just back onto the road. A few minutes later, my dad tried the ignition again. The car started immediately. They drove home without talking much. My mother kept checking the mirrors. She says she doesn't remember seeing another car behind them the rest of the way. They didn't think much about it afterward, not right away. It just became part of the story of that night. Years later, when I was older, my mother told me something she'd never said before. She said that same car had been behind them when they first turned onto the highway that evening. Not just once, twice. She said she didn't know why she hadn't connected it at the time. And she said something else, quietly. The road where their car broke down didn't lead toward town. It didn't make sense for anyone to be passing through, unless they already knew where they were going. She said she still thinks about how the man seemed to know they'd need help before they did, which was terrifying to think about.